Okay, the recording has started now.
Welcome to our viewers. This is Dr. Adityanji from US. I'm the President of Council for Strategic Affairs. We welcome our viewers worldwide, especially in US and in India, to yet another session, a roundtable discussion organized by Council for Strategic Affairs. Today is September 11th, 2021, and as all of you know, it is a very important date in the global history. The topic for our roundtable discussion today is a 9/11 tribute, a titanic shift in global jihadi terrorism and new challenges after withdrawal of US from the Afghanistan. Council for Strategic Affairs has organized this roundtable discussion. We have 4 speakers and we will be listening to them fairly soon. So I'm thankful to our viewers, our audience, who have taken time to join this meeting. I am aware that because of the nature of the day, there are a number of competing activities, conferences, symposia, not only on the topic of terrorism, but also some competing issues that have affected the NRI community. So welcome to you, those who are in India, good evening, and those who are in US, good morning. As I said, it is our homage to the citizens of the world who perished in the terror attacks on 9/11. Actually, it should read 2001. 9/11 has become a symbol of fight against terrorism, a scourge on humanity, and it is a fight against an evil ideology. Before 9/11, 2001, the date September 11th was known was for the famous address of Swami Vivekananda to the World Parliament of Religions, delivered in Chicago on a Tuesday afternoon on 9/11, 1893, when he made his opening comments with the following address: My sisters and brothers of America. And that was a pivotal event. It was symbolic of harmony, universal brotherhood, shared spirituality, and humanity. But since 2001, 9/11 as a date has acquired a totally different connotation and totally different significance. In today's session, while we are giving our tribute to the people who perished, innocent citizens, in this discussion on global challenges of jihadi terrorism, we are not going to focus on the past. We know who did it. We know whose ideology was twisted enough to cause this carnage. We are also not going to dignify the conspiracy theorist with a comment or discussion on that, because there are dime a dozen conspiracy theorists who will do finger pointing without any evidence. We are here today not to discuss the response to the global war on terrorism over the last 20 years, the mistakes that were made, how the situation was handled. That's not in the purview of this particular discussion. We are here to discuss exclusively the challenges of today and tomorrow. What do we do now? The geopolitical situation that exists in Afghanistan, resurgence of Taliban, re-control of the territory of Afghanistan by Taliban, what challenges it poses to the entire world, how the rest of the world will deal with the issues of newer challenges of terrorism from Taliban controlled Afghanistan. I must say that we have an excellent panel of distinguished experts who have a combined wisdom and erudition of more than 150 years of professional, academic, strategic, policy, diplomatic, and military experience. A little bit about Council for Strategic Affairs. Council for Strategic Affairs imparts education in the field of international relations. Council for Strategic Affairs fosters discussion, dialogue, and debate on geopolitical issues. Council for Strategic Affairs encourages strategic studies in general to raise the level of awareness. Council for Strategic Affairs aims to contribute towards world peace and prosperity. And Council for Strategic Affairs condemns terrorism in all forms worldwide. We usually do a monthly roundtable discussion on second Monday of each month at 8 p.m. And in month of September, the second Monday would have been Monday, September 14th. However, since we were going to discuss this particular topic, we decided it appropriate to shift the timings from Monday 8 p.m. to Saturday 9/11 at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We also have a monthly guest lecture by a domain expert once a month. This September month's distinguished lecture will be delivered by Ambassador Kanwal Sibal on foreign policy options for India. Council for Strategic Affairs organizes symposia, meetings, and conferences. We also promote publications of articles on geopolitics and related subjects. So that is a little bit of introduction about Council for Strategic Affairs, as well as our today's topic. I'm pleased to say that all our distinguished experts are here. So a little bit about the format for this conference. We have 4 speakers. They will be making their presentations, each one for a period of 15 minutes. After their presentations, we will have a question and answer session. I would encourage you to write your questions in the chat function or Q&A button rather than speaking it loud. My request to all the audience members is, please do not interrupt our distinguished speakers when they are speaking. We do not entertain questions while our speakers are speaking. There will be ample of time to ask questions and answers. If you have your cell phone, please put it on the mute. We don't want any extraneous noise to disturb our speakers. Your questions have to be succinct. They have to be focused. They have to be to the point. I really do not want the audience to write a monologue in the chat function or in the Q&A, write a very specific single theme question that we will entertain. And lastly, at the end of Q&A session, each of the speakers will give a 2 minutes closing statement or their parting message to our viewers. So that is the format we are going to pursue. Our first speaker is going to be Dr. Saptarishi Basu. Dr. Saptarishi Basu is a maritime security specialist and a maritime strategist He has written several security and strategy papers in various forums. He's a company security officer for last 3 years, specializing in security protocols of ISPS code and ICAO guidelines. In his private capacity, he has been consultant to private maritime security contractors and has been specializing in anti-piracy hardening measures, perimeter security, surveillance, and prevention of insurgency attacks on critical infrastructure. He has active and acute interest in counterinsurgency strategies. He is a marine engineer who passed out from erstwhile DMET and present-day MERI. In his maritime career, he has sailed to various foreign countries. He was chief engineer in a chemical tanker for 11 years. He has also been engaged as faculty at Ocean Education and Research Center, Indian Maritime University, and Hoon Maritime Institute and Germanshire Lloyd's Training Academy. He was jointly awarded the gold medal by the Engineering Congress in 2010 for the best technical article in condition-based monitoring system. He has been very active in our CSA discussion groups, and I invite now Dr. Saptarishi Basu to give his presentation. Dr. Saptarishi Basu, please.
Gentlemen, thank you for your kind words, kind introduction to Dr. Adityanji. I am quite overwhelmed that I am speaking in front of such a distinguished gathering, and I sparsely know whether I am qualified for that, but I'll try to make my point as relevant as the case may be. Uh, my my presentation will be very much based on common sense and observation, and a very different take on what the general discourse of discussion is. Uh, I would like to view the entire geopolitical calculus of the present day Afghanistan Taliban government with the terrorist cabinet which they have set up, and the events as they are unfolding and the ongoing civil war in retrospective view of the past incidents and how they have been happening, and also with the angle of a subject called social psychology or sociology. Generally, nothing happens without nothing, means any geopolitical event or incident, no matter how abrupt, how disrupting it may be, cannot take place without precedent or a build-up which has accumulated over several decades and centuries. And what you see manifestation at the end of the spectrum, maybe a week or a day or an hour or a blast or maybe a fall of Kabul within 2 or 3 weeks, is a result of build-up which has happened over a period of time. I would like to destroy the general narrative which is being dished out by the common media and what people are being made to believe, and also will try to give a trajectory to where the situation is going to lead, and maybe countermeasures with respect to what we as a nation or we as the democratic forces have in our options. Going straight to the point, the world witnessed a insurgent force of 75,000 guerrilla attackers fighting an irregular warfare or a sub-conventional warfare, defeating a modern, well-equipped, trained, having all three wings of army and navy, not navy, but an air force. It's a landlocked country, and special services and all different corps of military, defeated summarily and abjectly, and the entire terrorist organizations which were vagabonds till yesterday or political have-nots taken control. And we have also seen a humiliation of a superpower. This has left many strategists and many people guessing and gambling as to how this is possible, because any sense of normal analytical logic defies what has happened in front of us, and that has basically confused a lot of people who are students of both strategy as well as military science. But if you see by social social psychological angle, this thing becomes as clear as a crystal or a clean glass. If you just see the precedent or the history, any superpower which has left its colony, whether it be the British leaving the Indian subcontinent, whether it be Americans leaving Philippines, or any superpower which has left, except what happened in Japan, that also is debatable, and erstwhile Germany, after the Iron Curtain came down, have generally used weaponized chaos as a means of keeping the retribution for their actions during the colonization period coming back to their shores. The historical percept can be drawn that after the Treaty of Versailles, when the European powers that be had decided that Germany will not be able to lift its head for 1 millennia or at least a century, and they can rest and basically take back their economy to the pre-war era, Hitler came into power, and within 20 to 30 years, they were facing invasion from the Nazi forces. And what happened in Paris was a statement to the fact that once a people subjugated and humiliated, once they rise again, what kind of vengeance they can bring back to your shores. Taking cue from that, arch-imperialist, uh, the Minister of War, Winston Churchill, embarked on a plan which we known as the Madhouse, Operation Madhouse, when India was basically trying very hard for independence and the colony was to be liberated post-war, post-victory of Second World War, to split the country into several pieces. And this process is called Balkanization. This has been done to the Ottoman Empire, this has been done to the Balkans, and this is specifically what has been done to Afghanistan when British Empire left it. Afghanistan is a cartographic disaster of 5 competing nationalities and a dominant Pashtun nationality which is overpowering everybody else. And all the 5 nationalities have their claims on separate border areas inside which the ethnic populations are very much intermingled. And there are nations to those nationalities across the border. This creates what we call as a geopolitical potpourri which is continuously on the ball. The Durant line is a very jubilant example. The Pashtuns belong to that region, but they have been split right in the middle between 2 competing powers. One is Afghanistan, another is Pakistan, creating a fault line. So basically, if you see the Af-Pak region in total, it is a highly contested, highly unstable, ethnically fractured line where one kind of ethnic population has been always fighting against another. And this has been going in for quite some centuries. After the fall of the Caliphate and the invasion of the Mongol, the Durrani Empire came into the power and they established what is predominantly known and what you are seeing on televisions as of today as the Pashtun hegemony. And whether it be in the name of the Taliban or even the present government, the erstwhile government of Ashraf Ghani. And there are very strong contestants from the Hazaras, which are the tribe people, from the Turk, which are from Turkmenistan people, they're the minimum in that, but major is the Uzbek and the other competing nationalities or sub-nationalities which are in that region, which predominantly and collectively form the Northern Alliance. Now coming to the topic of why Afghanistan has been in a case of a permanent chaos. When the Russian Empire had its influence and prior to the descent into chaos, when Brezhnev started sending his forces right into the Afghanistan, Afghanistan was a remarkably progressive state with a very significant tourist destination. Now there is a catch line, आइए तो गुजरात में कुछ. Now if somebody comes and tells you to come to Afghanistan and spend some time, either you have to have a death wish or you must have lost your mind, or you have to have certain jihadist ideology where you are trying to take a single way journey. But in 1916 and 70s, Afghanistan was a very favored destination for tourism, very much similarly in the lines of Kashmir. Now how did this entire thing, which was a progressive nation, organic state totally crumbled down to what we are seeing is an abject, dissolved state of civil warlordism. There is no form of governance, whatever is the attributes of a state, one of the most principal being rule of law, is totally absent from that entire area. The descent starts from what we known as the father of jihad, Abdullah Azam. After the Arab-Israeli war in 1941, when the first Nakba took place, this gentleman was evicted from his house. And then he finds refuge in various colleges where he studies Islamic jurisprudence, and finally does his doctorate in Islamic jurisprudence and Islamic theology in the University of Cairo. This man has very strong and a very vehement ideology of what we know as the conquest of Muslim land, which he basically favors in the jihadist ideology and what we call as the takfirism and Ibn Taymiyyah, the hadith which he had written right up to Khorasan and the conquest of Ghazwa Hind. He formulates that idea and he starts his fiery preaching right to the students of sociology and the students of Islamic theology in that place. Charlie Hebdo, that gentleman who, when Russia invaded in order to control the satellite state, when Brezhnev had advanced his interventionism right into Poland, right into various places, military interventionism into the satellite, what they used to call the satellite sphere of influence, this started backfiring, and there was an intelligence war that is called the containment policy based on national security statement by the long telegram, and based on that the containment policy was put in place where both the powers, what we known as the Shatterland and the Reamland in the H. Mackinder's Heartland theory, were trying to create trouble. The idea was to create so much conflict into the Reamland or the Shatterland region that the core gets surrounded and that conflict gets spilled over into the core, thereby weakening the core. So the core is certainly the Eurasian continent, which, if you see by the Heartland theory, is having the majority of the landmass and human civilization. Of course, Siberian desert is there, and other desert steppe land is there, which needs to be unstable, and that was the target of the communist powers of that era, where major communist powers being Soviet Russia and China. So there was a geopolitical game between America and Russia for competing spheres of influence. In order to aid that, one US senator gets a bright idea of arming and funding the jihadist movement. And this was the genesis of trouble, our axis of evil, which we are facing as of today. What we are seeing as the Muslim Brotherhood or the Islamic jihadist movement is not new. It did not take place when the Soviet invaded Afghanistan. What happened was, in all these competing places, even during Anwar Sadat's time, when he was fighting against Israel, he was also fighting against the Islamic hardliners. There was, though the political establishment was hardline, but the Islamic extremist hardliners, the Muslim Brotherhood or Ikhwan ul Muslimin or the jihadist ideology was being suppressed worldwide. Nobody till that time had opened the Pandora's box by giving state sanction and state power or the support of a superpower to these kind of rogue and dangerous and uncontrollable ideologies, which have something what we call as a black hole effect or a centrifugal effect, a centripetal effect, which can suck in various regimes in a what we call in a vertically spiraling vertically downward spiral and destabilize entire regions per se. But America paid that game, and with that game, since geopolitically rooted, Iran was already an adversary. The only geographic route through them was Pakistan. Pakistan wounded after 1971, found out a very bad means of profiteering from that entire incident, making their military elite very rich. Investigation was hidden up by the Ojri camp blast and becoming a conduit for supplying weapons and resources, know-how, technology, ideology to Afghanistan and making the Mujahideen, as they were called at that time, fight against the Soviet conquest. All forms of government, what we call as DIME, diplomatic, informational, military and economy of United States came into gear. You can always remember John Rambo Part 2, where he basically becomes one of the helpers of Mujahideen. Probably if you play this movie today, in American cinema halls, everybody will be beating their head what we made. But it is an acceptance of the sin, how complicit the entire American thought process was in those days in creating and giving birth to this Frankenstein called the Mujahideen or the Al-Qaeda or the global Islamic Jihad. This was the first experience of what we call hybrid warfare or 4GW, and which has now graduated to lone wolf attack at 5GW. Till that time, most of the militaries in the world, including the Russian Empire, were mostly geared for third generation warfare. That means concentrated conventional warfare and to some extent nuclear warfare. When you subject such amount of visible concentrated force to a sub-conventional warfare, where there are no front lines, no rear operation, no logistic lines, no clear visible military objectives, no identifiable flag, no identifiable command structures, basic tactics of conventional military operations become extremely futile. Like what we generally understand as a decapitation strike works fantastic in a normal structured military hierarchy. But the way this jihadist organization works is a distributed franchisee command system, what we generally have seen in case of Al-Qaeda. Similar ideology of Islamic Brotherhood, of the Ummah, the vindication of getting back the Muslim lands, vindication of creating the global jihadist caliphate, establishing Shariat law, and it is free for all. It has become something of a Hindu, what we call proverbial Rakta Beach. If you kill one organization, kill one leader, kill one certain ideologue, another 10 get inspired and they start regerminating. That is what we have seen was unleashed when Soviet Russia folded up and went back. Now there are various kinds of theories which come into being. I am not going into detail. Basically, we must understand from the social psychology point of view what motivates this kind of warlordism in that region. First of all, Pashtun Wali, the code of honor, which was basically ingrained into the Pashtun system, but similarly competed from various places. After the Soviets went, we saw Afghanistan descend absolute into a mayhem and hell of tribal warfare or civil war, where Pakistan, armed with the US petrodollars, huge amount of arms cash which was being supplied to that, having strong control on certain aspect of these militants, started forming what is called the Taliban. Taliban was a slogan which was picked up from the normal village side of the Afghanistan. Taliban basically translated in Arabic means student. Anybody who is a student is a Taliban. Like the Sikh religion, whoever is Sikhu or is a student is called a Sikh. Similarly, they came up with this ideology. They marketed it and found it resounds very well with the Afghan society. Till the advent of the Taliban, they have had basically concocted the imagination of these people, stating that these students or normal students of Allah will deliver, or these young people will eventually deliver Afghanistan away from the grasp of foreign intervention. Afghanistan predominantly in its entire history, right from the Arabic invasion, the Persian invasion, the Greek invasion, the Russian invasion, and British Bengal Lancers going and attacking there has been a contested land where they have been persistently subjected to foreign intervention. And this has got into the psyche of the Afghan people. Whenever they see a foreigner, they have some very wild idea about their mind. They see that somebody has come to rob them, loot them, kill them, plunder them. And this very basic concept, unless and until you understand that in Afghanistan, you will never be able to basically decipher what goes in Afghanistan and how to solve this problem. The basic mistake which any power can do is send their own boots on ground and try to do nation building on behalf of Afghan. You have got a mortal enemy who will fight you to the death, the last man standing. Afghans hate foreigners. You have to understand the basic psyche of Afghanistan, which I think the strategists of the superpowers in their arrogance of their firepower never realized. This is the social psychology of a general Afghanistani. Plus, you have to understand the demography of Afghanistan. 97% of Afghanistan is Muslim. And there is very, very less space for other competing religions and ideologies that has been almost effectively wiped out from that land. What people do not understand in Afghanistan is that most of the Afghans have Islamic fundamentalism ingrained into their structure of the social fabric. Now, I want to raise a caution that I am not calling every Afghan a terrorist. Please don't misinterpret it. But the hardline ideology of Afghan and the concept of jihad and concept of Islam being the dominant force is ingrained into every man and woman of Afghanistan. If you go there, you cannot mistakenly rule it out. They are devout Muslims and they follow the Islamic code. Then where is the problem? Where is the fight? Why they are fighting among themselves? It is because of the different strains of the ethnicities. And it is pure fight on the power grab aspect. The name of jihad or ideology is only comes into play when a foreign power who is basically against that ideology or not from representing that region or religion comes into the picture. That is when these forces amalgamate and fight an outsider. When the outsiders are gone, they fight among themselves. Understanding from a social point of view, Afghans, after their fall from grace in 1960s and 70s of late, have seen poverty, have seen dysfunctional societies, have seen no structure of government, have seen absolute lack of resources and lack of rule of law in various forms. And they value the rule of gun, most of it. I am not talking about the most civilized part of it. Demographically, Afghanistan is one of the youngest countries in the entire southeast western area, Asian era. We have a national age somewhere around 30-35. Afghanistan has a national average age of just 17 to 18 years. That means a significant population of Afghanistan is restless and they are youth. Now, given absolutely no options for employment, given absolutely no options for a functional career, these people have resorted to the easiest means of employment, which happens to be the global school of jihad. So I will briefly
wrap up, please.
Yeah. Today, by installing this Talibani government, actually Pakistan has waged war of conquest on another neighboring countries. The global League of Nations have not been able to address this. They are trying to find out the problem in Afghanistan, which is ethnic and which is systemic, but the root cause or center of gravity of that problem is not in Afghanistan. Center of gravity and critical vulnerability of the entire Afghanistan, this Talibani war machine lies in Pakistan. if Indian government, which is going to face a loaded train of Afghan jihadis coming straight to its border, assisted by ISI operative and special forces, it cannot go to Afghanistan and solve the problem. The center of gravity is Pak occupied Kashmir and variable critical vulnerabilities of Pakistan. Without addressing the Pakistani problem, India has very little diplomatic leverage against of China, Pakistan, Iran, and Russian axis. Always Russia has sidelined itself, Iran has sidelined itself, but the China-Pak axis is a very, very strong factor which is going to sustain the Afghani people through the times of freezer of funds, where these people will be giving the fund as well as the technical know-how to sustain their illegitimate terrorist government. And Afghanistan is going to become a black hole of hybrid organizations. Remember today, the Southeast Asian countries are not going to face a pure terrorist or a pure criminal gang. It is going to become a black hole state which survives on criminal activities such as narco-terrorism, such as women trafficking, such as, let us say, human trafficking, arms peddling, and also bootlegging and other kinds of criminal activities to generate funds which will sustain their activities for ideological and terrorist purposes. No amount of penal code can stop these people, because these people are ready to blow themselves up for ideology. So a thorough strategy, a group effort from democratic forces to counter hybrid warfare and hybrid terrorist criminal organization on what we call as a typical Tamara Makarenko black hole state is going to be the way forward. Thank you, sir, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Dr. Basu, for very, very detailed historical, psychoanalytic, sociological, and strategic, discussion and arguments as to pointing where the real source of problem is. And we shall come back to it during Q&A and discussion portion. We have to move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Dr. K. Siddhartha. Dr. Siddhartha is a strategic thinker. He's a geostrategist. He's a knowledge and perception management consultant. He has been an advisor to international government agencies and is sought after for his advisory roles with different governments and national and international institutions. He has been a mentor of international repute, having had, a role in mentoring 1,553 successful students of Indian civil services. He is a distinguished thought leadership trainer, an earth scientist, and international stature, and pioneering research in paleogeographic reconstruction. He has written 44 books. He's an educationist. So we are going to have, his presentation as the next one. So Dr. Siddhartha, please.
Thank you so much, sir, for this introduction. It's a privilege to be around this August panel. And I am to present a presentation, but if you allow me, I'd like to shift myself to an analysis of sorts that will go on to make it even better of sorts, sir, if you allow me, sir.
That's okay, Dr. Siddhartha. It's your.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It has been so nice listening to this brilliant insight by Dr. Saptarshi. My analysis is going to be based on two aspects. Of course, one is going to be the concept of jihad, that as we understand it. The second is how is it that it is going to be affecting the whole of the world, India in particular, and then what are the options that do we going to be having it covert as well overt in trying to deal with it. Now, as I understand it, civilization is all going to be about how we treat each other and how we treat our environment. If we're going to treat it well, it is we are civilized. If we don't going to respect our environment, we are not. And Islam is one of the ugliest faces that the humans can go on to possibly wear. That is the most distorted face that the humans can go on to see and visualize. And it has many such type of manifestations, and who knows it better than India, which has been under such type of influence for the last 1200 years. And you can imagine, even 1200 years before, they were the people who invaded the country, and they were the enemies of knowledge. They were the enemies of beauty. I mean, that is the reason why they vandalized the whole of Nalanda University, why they vandalized something like 1,000, more than 1,000 temples. Jihadi is one manifestation of such type of malice. Jihad is essentially hatred. Hatred is a coward's way of taking a revenge. Hatred is a weapon and a motivation for them. And in this case, hatred is a revenge for a reason from for being superior, better, innovative as well, value loaded as well, and most importantly, for being human. Nowhere you are going to be treated in an inhuman manner for being a human other than by the jihadis. And I haven't seen that it is a war. It is a jihadis do not going to tolerate differences, even family members as well, and their hatred knows no bounds. Terror is a product of answering one question and only one question: why the whole world is not Islamic? And a hatred-filled mind seeks jihad all the time and in every possible form. Jihadi terrorism is essentially an industry, and it has so many beneficiaries. Like any other industries, goes into flourish and goes into go ahead with it. Now, understanding it from that perspective, the entire aspect of jihadism and other aspects can be competed with and can be correlated with entropy. Entropy is, in physics terms, it is going to be called by the name of maximum disorder. Now, a seed of entropy that was sown during the birth of Islam, and this entropy maximization is taking shape now. Unless a new metastable equilibrium reaches with a new threshold, entropy, this entropy will keep on increasing irreversibly. And that is what we're going to call it in thermodynamics. That's the law of thermodynamics, that every closed system, and as Dr. Saptarishi pointed out, it's a closed system. They have a closed mind, and that has to reach entropy maximum disorder in this case, which will be irreversible. A new form of jihad in this case is going to be a disruption. A disruption is going to be sadistic disruption, lifestyle disruption, peace disruption, innovation disruption, creativity disruption, because they are the enemy of all of them. To say that the world will not be stable, the world will not be peaceful, and it is something like a foregone conclusion. That there will be something like a security threat, there will be hate crimes, there will be complete disregard to humanity, there will be vandalism, there will be fights for no rhyme or reason, and there will be these jihadis will be new idols for a new group of people. That is also going to be an understatement of sorts. The situation at present will be the key to understanding the challenges posed by jihadi terrorism after whatever that has been happening in that place, and after, of course, the US withdrawal from this region. The present situation in Afghanistan is that we have a lot of training camps in that place, and it is a tailor-made situation for the Chinese. That the Taliban, in event of no one is going to be in full control of whole of Afghanistan, and that gesture is typical of China as a initiative-driven and far-reaching foreign policies. So it has a lot of training camps which are going to be getting revived. A lot of international and regional terrorist organizations can go to mobilize and operate from this region to threaten the entire of the security of the South and Central Asian region. Pakistan will going to have a lot of excuses to increase its meddling in Afghanistan. And of course, the least that can be said is terrorist groups operating against India like Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar-e-Toiba will going to be having a greater amount of a strategic depth as well in this case. The sinister designs that is going to be presented in this case, they are going to be many of them. They are eyeing for Ghazwa-e-Dunya. It's not only Ghazwa-e-Hind. That is, India is the last frontier that they want to conquer. The victory of a radical Islam against another superpower it has actually inspired them for a major radicalization and a mini catalyzed terrorism in the whole of the world. The target of jihadi terrorism is aiming to create an Islamic world with a strict Sharia law that is going to be enforced. They will go to vandalize whatever they can. The world will not go on to be a nice place, to be an ugly place to live in, as they are going to be making it. Lifestyle traumatization will going to take place, and a new warfare that will not be based on anything other than only barbarism will go on to be. But one of the greatest dangers that we are going to be facing is going to be in the form of a new danger in exploring ecology, nature, and environment, making environment as a weapon mentored by the Chinese. You never know that they will go on to destroy the mountains, dynamite it. You never know that they will go on to break the dams. You never know that they will go on to insert certain type of germs in your territory. You never know that they will go on to trigger a lot of landslide activities because they will go to allow good amount of water accumulation to be taking place. Nature is going to be the real culprit because a good number of things can be monitored. This is something that is not going to be monitored, and Chinese are mastering this technology in Tibet. They're mastering this technology in Arunachal Pradesh as well. The worst part of the collapse, the worst part of this collapse that has taken place is going to be in the form of a goodwill management and a soft power approach. To an extent, soft power is something that could go on to mold a good number of people, but not this jihadi mindset. All this has led to an emerging geopolitical dynamics and change in the superpower structure and scenario in Central Asia. For example, there will be an increased terrorist activity inside Central Asia, states like Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. And China, as a persecuted Uyghur minority, could go on to become a haven for the extremists and a launchpad for all such type of terrorist attack. The whole of EU will go on to expect a heightened sense of terrorist activity, and the Western world will keep on experiencing more and more a novel form of such type of terrorism as well in this case. What Pakistan is going to be doing in this case is that it is going to forge a good amount of counter-terrorism cooperation and with other extra regional countries like Russia, China, Tajikistan. This may go on to help combat a rapidly expanding Tehrik-e-Taliban to an extent. But Pakistan's geopolitical power is going to getting up. And that is where Pakistan is going to be playing a duplicitous game all in this case. The other aspect in this case is Iran cannot go on to take on Taliban with the proxy support of Pakistan to it, since it is much weakened due to the American sanctions, whatever that is going to be the case. And to arrive at that balance, they will require to align their interests with regional powers like China, Russia, and India. The rising threat of Taliban provides Russia an opportunity to expand its footprints in whole of Central Asia. That is how Central Asia is going to be affected. What China is going to do is that China will go to seek a greater amount of inroad for insulating its western flank security of a Belt and Road Initiative and the prospect of prospecting precious lithium and rare earth element resources in Afghanistan. China will also go on to look for containing India, and of course Afghanistan goes in to provide an haven for all of them. China has already pledged and provided assistance to Afghanis, and they are increasing by leaps and bounds, including today's news as well. One can go on to analyze it. The impact that is going to be taking place in India is going to be, of course, spiraling. Some of this has been talked about by Saptarshi. The spread of pro-jihadic sentiment, it is sentiment that is going to be significant, that is a socio-political dimension under which these things are going to be taking place. So that could be quite widespread in India, and we have a way of knowing that for sure, and to the extent that such ideas are endorsed by jihadis in the country itself. Now, what will going to happen is there will be increased attack potential because of the Panjshir bargain, which Pakistan may have derived out of helping Afghanistan to take a control over it. The danger from Taliban protagonist apologists in India is that any credible action that is going to take to stop terror plots in the country would be judged as an attack on minorities and as human rights violation. but more barbaric than the Taliban are going to be the non-Islamic global enablers, chiefly the left liberal mafia, who are going to be in greater abundance, masquerading and living in India in that manner. The Muslim ghettos are going to be presenting a good amount of problem, largely because such type of ghettoization has taken place in almost all the states of India. And more terror groups will be camouflaged themselves by the intention of seeding a lot of contradiction among the left liberal media, which is going to increase in the coming days more and more. Throughout the whole of the world, as I going to see it, there will be a rise of the right-wing extremism as a reaction. Identity politics driven by right-wing nationalism will take a new role of intolerance as a weapon as well as a strategy, both of them. Now, one can understand it. There are apprehensions. Many violent incidents may have taken place in different places in a day to come, and they are going to be taking place. One can imagine that this is what has been happening in several places in the whole of the world, where the bastion of liberalism, neo-Nazi tendencies are spreading a bit too fast. Social media, in this case, accounts for run of the extreme right wing, and one knows it largely because they are going to be getting more likes, they are going to be getting more sharings, and everything in this case. New Zealand, Europe, India, UK are all seeing incidents that will going to bring a lot of convergence in the coming days. A new paradigm will go on to emerge in international relations, and I do not go on to think, I wish to be incorrect in this case, but I do not go on to think that is, as we're going to say it, there is in international relations, there are only permanent interests, there are no permanent friends. Now, that the time will come when we have to seek friendship and we have to seek bondage in such a manner. Now, in order to deal with such type of a threat, we have to have a lot of innovative methods, because you cannot go on to fight it people to people. You can't go to fight a barbaric force, and we can imagine what has happened to the United States in this case. And this is going to be AI-based management that is going to be required, AI integrated one as well that is going to be required, with the help of robotics-based technology to deal with selective targeting of the terrorists and the jihadis in this case. Already, there has been an increasing role of the CIA and other intelligence agencies, and we have seen that all the three major intelligence agency chiefs have been in India by today. Israel type of a cooperation will be will demand, and in most parts of the world, which will be required. Now, what India can go on to do in this case is India has several options. One of these options is that India has to build its relationship with Iran right now in no uncertain terms. The second part is recently India backed Maldives to be UNGA president, and that has been an opportunity under Maldives presidency to pass a resolution to gather international solidarity against the oppression of human rights in Afghanistan. Now, these two mechanisms will go on to put India in a much more better position to launch a global initiative against arms supply by Pakistan and so on. Parallelly, India has to engage Taliban through the Troika Plus initiative to rekindle the Durand Line initiative as well in this case, and that diplomacy also. India will be voicing a good amount of concern about Uyghurs, and in UNSC, it will be able to make Taliban neutral in this respect with respect to China, because that is going to be the only one that we can go on to do it. India also goes on to be having a clear message that will go on to continue to support Afghanistan, and it has to continue to support it. Now, the other aspect is a real politic. That is being patient with a real politic diplomacy. And there are two components. That is, the danger that is there are going to be groups in Afghanistan which will go on to be having a contradictory interest, and that is what India has to exploit. Afghanistan, in any case, is going to be a zero-sum country, largely because it is one of those countries where you hardly going to find any type of a resource, whatever that has been talked about so far, notwithstanding. That is, the United States sank almost $1 trillion in this case, and Afghanistan is going to be a great graveyard in this case. Afghanistan, as I go to see it, will go to implode first and then go to explode. And Pakistan is likely to follow prey to all of it. For the global community, all in all, what we are going to say is that it is easy to fool three type of people. I am going to take the social psychological aspect to conclude that part. There is those who are having ego, those who are having arrogance, and those going to be having greed. Taliban is going to have all of them. So it is not going to be too difficult to fool them as well. This is the time when differences among one of the closest friends are natural, and that is going to be in Taliban. And for India, the main interest is to prevent Afghanistan using their own soil in this case. Now, what we can going to do is that we can go to reverse this entropy. That is the maximum disorder, and a disorder that will going to allow everything to collapse. Because the world must have to come together. This is the only time. The world must fight to vanquish jihad, not only aimed at India, but the whole of the world right now. And the world community has to find a way to confine the spread of Islamic teachings. It has to segregate it, it has to isolate. In order for world to be jihad free, it needs to be free of the people who preach and practice such type of a hate. And they also going to practice such type of indoctrination to their children. That is how the world will go on to become a better place to live. Thank you all so much for that.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Siddhartha, for a very lucid presentation, which seamlessly follows Dr. Basu's presentation. So now we will go on to our third speaker. As I told the audience that we will take Q&A session towards the end. So we go on to our third speaker, and he is a distinguished diplomat. Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor is an acknowledged luminary diplomat with a distinguished career, working closely with heads of governments, heads of state, and other global leaders and policymakers in different continents of the world. He is an educator also. He has taught at some of the most prestigious universities, including Sorbonne in France, Paris, IIT Roorkee, MDI in Gurugram, Georgetown University in US, University of Maryland College Park, and as a visiting scholar at George Washington University. He's a proud alumnus of IIT Delhi with BTech in Electrical Engineering and MTech in Systems and Management Studies. He's working as an international strategic advisor to Intellect Design Arena Inc. He is executive director of Smart Village Development Fund at the Wheels Global Foundation, an initiative of IIT alumni in US. And he is advisory director of Ambassador Circle, American Hindu Coalition, and chairman of Advisory Council of DiplomacyIndia.com. He is an author of the Amazon bestseller book, Beyond the COVID-19 Pandemic, Envisioning a Better World by Transforming the Future of Healthcare. Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor also received the 2020 IAPC, Indo-American Press Club Excellence in Literature Award, and the 2020 Raymond Aron Group Health for All Award for his latest book. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to you to present Ambassador Kapoor. Ambassador Kapoor, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adityanji, for the introduction and for setting up this panel discussion on a very important topical subject, which is going to be impacting the lives of all of us and of a large number of people all over the world, more and more in the days ahead. You have been, laying out the premise for the discussions today. You have done it very well in your introductory comments. And Dr. Mr. Saptarishi Basu and K. Siddhartha, who followed you, have also elaborated very well on the scenario and the landscape which is ahead of us. What I'd like to do is not to repeat what has already been said before, but to try to present a different angle to the analysis. I would like to see Afghanistan in the historical context initially as to what was Afghanistan before, and then in the current context, what is Afghanistan, and in the future context as what will be Afghanistan for the world and for the region. So in the historical context, it was a Hindu country. It was, the name also comes from Azwa, which is horse riders. There are other interpretations of the name, which also means like Afghan, defective place, and it has been called in the different times as land of the unruly, land of the rebels, land of the free, land of insolence. So a lot of the action of Mahabharat took place in Afghanistan, with Gandhari being from Kandahar. And after being a Hindu country for a very long period of time in its history, maybe thousands of years, became a Buddhist country. And from Buddhist country, the northwest of Afghanistan invaders who brought in Islam, it slowly became a Muslim country. And aspects of that, Siddhartha ji has outlined very well. With people today from all the neighboring countries, the different tribal aspects he has mentioned. There are, the Tajiks, the Uzbeks, the Hazaras, the Pashtuns, the Nuristanis, and there were, of course, Hindus and Sikhs earlier. So, from a point where it was a very important land of learning and knowledge and wisdom, it has deteriorated progressively over time to a point where it is becoming like a black hole, like a dark hole, as was mentioned earlier. It's like a black hole, even more emphatically. The sense you're blowing up the Bamyan Buddhas, you're blowing up your own heritage, your own history, your own culture. And the current position is so saddening to me in my heart when I think about it. I've been closely associated with Afghanistan as a diplomat. I was Joint Secretary, South Asia Association for Regional Cooperation when Afghanistan was brought into SAARC as a member. And I had to work very hard on it. And there's a big history about it, which I don't want to get into it in the current context, but only to say that my interactions with the leaders and the people of Afghanistan have been there for a very long time. Even in Washington, D.C., the earlier ambassador, Mohib, Hamidullah Mohib, was the ambassador of Afghanistan to the US. We were in close touch, we were interacting frequently, and then he went back as the National Security Advisor, and then he had to flee from Afghanistan along with the president recently. The ambassador of India who was there, who was present in Afghanistan, we had worked together in Paris, Rudrendra Tandon. So occasionally I've been in touch with them also to understand better the landscape and what is happening there. Now, coming to the present situation, I would like to do a brief socio-anthropological analysis. If you have had war for so many decades and centuries, it has been called the graveyard of empires, as we all know. The British and thereafter succeeding empires coming up to the Soviet Union and then the USA. So what do you have in that context, in that country, as a result of all that? A country which is very young, as was pointed out by the earlier speaker, the average age being very low, about 18. 50% of the country today in Afghanistan is below 19. A large number of the menfolk have died as terrorists in the various wars. So the percentage of women is more than the percentage of men. So if you have a population of 38 million, about 20 million women, and another more than 10 million who are young kids less than 18 years of age, So what do you have? You have a remaining small part of the population, 25%, not even 25%, less than that, which is the adult men of not very old age, and amongst them there are Pashtuns and others. They are divided amongst themselves. And for the young children growing up in Afghanistan who are less than 20 years, who have seen the US period of Afghanistan, where there were schools and colleges and bars and cafes and freedom to wear what you want, to dress as you want, to say what you want. For the women folk of Afghanistan who have been exposed to the same freedoms for the last 20 years, where are they today? Where are they tomorrow? They have been exposed to hell in this life. In the sense that if you're a young child in Afghanistan today, instead of a regular school, where will you be headed to as a male? As a female, you will not be allowed to go to school, you'll be sitting at home. As a young boy, you'll be going to a madrasa, and what are your subjects? Political Islam, terrorism, violence, guns, global jihad, etc. These are your subjects. What are your toys? Your toys are guns, grenades, bombs, missiles, rockets. These are the toys you'll be playing with because you will not have normal toys. And who are your role models? Your role models are the Taliban and the other armed men strutting around like peacocks on the streets, killing people at random, at wanton, without any respect for human rights, without any respect for rule of law. So what sort of society are you creating or have you got into? It's the absolutely antithetical definition of a society. It is based on violence. It is based on destruction, not only of self, but the others around you. So, in a way, while Pakistan may, feel victorious at this point of time, while China may want to take the benefit of the association through ISI with Afghanistan and loot Afghanistan of its raw materials and resources temporarily. In the long term, I see a very bleak future, extremely bleak future for the country itself, in the sense that it's becoming like a Frankenstein monster for itself and for the region. And for Pakistan, Pakistan will be the next casualty, and China will be the next casualty. The dreams of China to become a global power or number one global power in the world is history already. But for it to survive now, in the long term, will become more and more precarious with the sort of things which will emanate out from there. What are the options for India and for US and for the world? How do you protect yourself? How do you, sort of defend yourself against this onslaught is what we have to look at. The Quad will have to be strengthened. You will have to sort of isolate that region into a bubble through technology. Instead of creating a self-protecting dome in your part of the world, in your countries, in your regions, you will have to create a dome around Afghanistan and Pakistan and thereafter China, so that all the violence, all the implosions, all the explosions, like one of the speakers mentioned, first it will implode, then it will explode. All that is contained within that region through technology. That is what will be required. A lot of the most recent advances in technology will be very essential, because for anybody to go down with their boots on the ground will not be really worth it, as has been the experience of the Soviet Union and the USA in the past. So what ISI and what China will do will be sheer folly. In the long term, they're already doing it. If you have a cabinet of ministers, oh my goodness, when I look at the names, and the world is not even naming and shaming them as they should be named and shamed globally continuously. And they are saying they're professional and business-like and other accolades are being given to that sort of cabinet which is full of terrorists, not just terrorists. United Nations Security Council listed terrorists. Terrorists with a big bounty on their heads. Terrorist leaders, not just followers. And that is the sort of government you'll be dealing with. That is the sort of, and my heart cries for the women of Afghanistan, for the children of Afghanistan as to what sort of future lies ahead for them. I'm going to stop here and leave it to the questions later. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you very much indeed, Ambassador Kapoor, for a very succinct and very brief presentation, but with very, very useful ways of containing this terror crucible. I'm very, very thankful to you for your comments, which are very timely. And now we will go to our fourth and the last speaker. Our last speaker is Major General Shashi Bhushan Asthana, SM VSM. General Asthana is a globally acknowledged strategic and security analyst who has authored more than 400 publications. He has been a veteran infantry general with 40 years of experience at national and international fields. He has held various key appointments in Army and United Nations. He is an instructor and speaker at various UNPK and UN organizations, strategic military forums and universities. He has been interviewed by various national and international news channels, newspapers, organizations on strategic, military, and UN-related subjects. Currently, he is on Governing Security Council of CEE, IOED, IPC, and other UN organizations. He is also on the advisory board of Sweden, member of EPON. He is member of the Expert Group Challenges Forum. He is former Additional Director, General Infantry, IOED representative in UN headquarters, Vienna in Austria. He is also the Chief Instructor of United Services Institutions of India, the oldest think tank of India. He has been awarded numerous awards on excellence by various entities. He is member of consultative body for ECOSOC and International Police Commission. So now I invite Major General Shashi Bhushan Asthana, who will bring his military experience to this discussion. Major General Asthana, please. The floor is yours. So can you unmute yourself, please? Yes.
Thank you, respected Dr. Adityan ji, esteemed panelists, members of CSA, and a big namaste to all the viewers. A lot has been spoken. Pleasure to be speaking on this forum and on the day which is especially important because that starts the realization of global war on terrorism. And certainly, if we are talking of 9/11, a homage to everyone who lost his life there. I will try not to repeat what has been said earlier. A lot has been said by the esteemed speakers. Let me start by the idea of jihad. Now, all I wish to add is jihad has got different interpretations. In fact, 3-4 of them. Go through any interpretation. No one leads to terrorism. And therefore, jihad, which people are talking about, is misinterpretation of jihad. Then let's talk of what is the global impact of what is happening. Let's see the situation in Taliban, in Afghanistan. You have a government which can rightly be called as the government of the terrorist, by the terrorist, and for the terrorist. Because 18 out of 33 are UN designated terrorists, as was mentioned by Ambassador Kapoor. The second important thing is that you are in a very awkward global hostage situation. People of other countries who went into Afghanistan, they went by their own choice, but to get out of there, you need Taliban's consent. So that is why you will find that the global response is quite muted. Everyone is singing praises for Taliban and hoping like hell that Taliban 2.0 is different than Taliban 2.1, although the actions on ground speak otherwise. So therefore, that's one issue which the world is saddled with. Let's see how the response is going to be. And as a practitioner, at the end of my talk, I will give out as to what can be done. Because after listening to a number of speakers, what I found is that perhaps there is a little sign of hopelessness that Afghanistan will remain like this only, and there is no hope. I agree by various speakers who have said that yes, the idea of jihad is or ummah or whatever you may say, that nobody else in other than Islam must exist. But the fact is that we have to exist. And for that existence, we have to fight. And the fight has to be global. And each one of us on this earth has to fight for this survival. We cannot subdue to an ideology of this kind. And if that be so, then let's prepare ourselves. Let's understand what the challenge is. And now when we talk of challenges, let me speak of the challenges. There was no doubt, was never a doubt, as Dr. Saptarishi also mentioned. Yes, there is a historical perspective to it. There was no doubt that no foreign recipe can work in Afghanistan. No doubt about it. But the fact is that when United States went there have been, and they were working with Afghan National Security Forces. Certainly, if Pakistan-Taliban nexus has gained an edge, obviously something must have gone wrong in the strategy. And let's accept and learn out of it. Had the US pulled out after changing the government to a democratic government and killing Osama bin Laden, it would have been a successful operation. But as even Mr. Saptarishi was using some of the military terms, I will put it that the moment you extend your operation beyond the culmination point, and if it is a hybrid operation, thereafter you are actually on a downward graph. So thereafter, continuation of this operation was not in the strategic interest, number one. Number two, now that whatever has happened, there is no point talking about it. The second thing which we need to understand is that Afghanistan was not the epicenter. Afghanistan is still not the epicenter. Afghanistan is not the master planner. The epicenter lies in Pakistan. And why I say so in no uncertain terms is, you see, it's a deadly combination of a fundamentalist mentality of a terror organization. The AFPAC region is the largest conglomeration of terror organizations in the world. It is also a country which has 6th largest population. It also has got a nuclear weapon. So you have, and it is also a country where the army owns the state. So if that be so, you are now talking of an AFPAC region wherein the government in place, which has been put in Afghanistan, has got tentacles in Rawalpindi. And if that is so, then, and it's a deadly combination of terrorism, of the state actor. Our state actor has used the fundamentalist part. And with this state actor, you have, unfortunately, it's also a nuclear country. So therefore, the responses of the entire world have to be calibrated accordingly. And that's where the world is into a little bit of, not little bit, into a great problem as far as dealing with this kind of scenario is concerned. The second problem is that there have been a double gaming. Terrorism has become an industry. This industry is being used, and it is being used with profit. It is also being used for strategic games. And this strategy of using terrorism, although started by so many, as was brought out in the historical narrative which was spoken by various panelists, but the fact is that something must end at some point of time, and the word must see sense, because if we don't, then there are certain problems. Now, what are the global implications? Firstly, 20 years back, we had 9/11. As per, if media is to be believed, then the US assessment is that for any terror group in Afghanistan to become strong enough to strike the mainland again, it will take almost 2 years. My assessment is it will be much earlier. So today you have a situation wherein the fundamentalists have got a boost, and you can have 9/11 kind of attacks, not only in USA, or may not be in USA immediately, but you can have it many other places. So the whole world has become unsafe. And unsafe not only because of the entry of terrorists, but unsafe because of the ideology, because the transport of ideology has actually been much faster than the physical movement of the terrorists. The terrorists as of now have not, very many have moved out of Taliban or Afghanistan, but the ideology has moved much faster. A feeling that we have defeated the largest, shall we say, military power in the world is already there. Pakistan has jubilated it. And unfortunately, I still find that the strategists of many world powers continue to believe that Pakistan is the solution, whereas it is part of the problem. The second thing is the double standards by these terror organizations. Many people said, and very convincingly, that the idea of jihad is ingrained in their mind and there is no problem and they are going to follow it come what may. No, that is not correct. This idea of jihad is not that much ingrained. I have dealt with enough terrorists by now. They all are sold out for money. If that was so, then please tell me as to why out of Uyghurs and the treatment of Uyghurs, why none of the Muslim countries is speaking. If that is the case, then why these terror organizations are not speaking? If that is the case, then why Taliban is openly saying, no, I will not, I will compromise on ETIM. Whereas the ETIM leaders have physically fought with Taliban. So basically, they all can be sold. It's an industry, and the industry is flourishing on the name of religion. And this is the reality of this year. Yes, there are a lot of ideologies, lot of theories, lot of things which have been brought out on the table as of today. But the fact is, today's reality is money. Everything moves by money. And China is the best example of that. China, all what they have done is, Chinese are also foreigners. And Chinese are also, why Taliban is saying that please come and do the development here. But the only reason is money. That's it. So we have to understand that the dynamics is changing. Next point is, all these groups which are there in Taliban, and they joined all of them. Pakistanis also joined in, because that time the strategic aim was push US out, and from Pakistan's point of view, push India out. For this cause, everybody joined in. Now, once this cause is over, the next step will be that there will be a fight for power, there will be a fight for domination, there will be a fight for regional control, there will be a fight for money, there will be a fight for bounties. And therefore, there is going to be an internal turmoil as far as Afghanistan is concerned and as far as FPAC region is concerned. If everybody thinks that Pakistan is too happy about it or China is too happy about it, I'm sorry, I may not contribute to that idea for the simple reason, because Chinese are equally worried about ETIM. They know that Taliban has promised, but Taliban cannot divorce ETIM. Pakistanis know that Taliban has promised, irrespective of what happens. TTP is not going to sit down. They are also going to target the fencing which is there with Pakistan. They are also going to target Pakistan. They are not going to accept the Durand line. They are not going to accept a division of Pashtuns. And same is the case of the refugee problem as well. So all immediate neighbors are concerned with the problem of export of terrorism. They are also concerned with the problem of refugees. As far as India is concerned, the concerns are two. One is, of course, the export of terrorism, which we don't mind too much, for the simple reason because if we have been able to resolve terrorism to some extent, it was because of our internal strengthening, not that Pakistan was ever short of manpower. So additional manpower coming or additional terrorists coming from Afghanistan, that doesn't bother us. The only thing is, yes, they will have slightly better weapons and surveillance equipment, and that's it. But what is more important is not only for India, but for everybody else, is the ideology. Because India is the second largest Muslim population in the world, which will subsequently become perhaps the largest Muslim population in the world. But so far, I can proudly say that the Indian Muslims have been quite patriotic. If you see the number of, if you see the population, Muslim population in India versus the recruitment in ISIS, it is one of the lowest percentage considering the numbers. So therefore, I think, and by virtue of a secular society, the Muslims in India do realize that if there is any safest place where for Muslims, and if there is any place where they can speak whatever they want, it is India. Because at other places, they find it quite difficult to speak openly what they actually feel. So this is one part of it. Now coming on to way ahead. Let me tell you that Taliban will break every promise, and they are breaking on daily basis. The women are going to have a tough time there. Everybody who feels that wait and watch is the policy, and we will see Taliban by their actions, and they will have to earn legitimacy. I am sorry, the time is over. We are seeing it every day. We may not like to see it, or we may not like to acknowledge it as a slightly different issue. Today, Taliban has the, shall we say, strength to tell United States that please fulfill this promise of taking off Haqqani from your sanction list. So that is the state in which we are. I also heard that if Taliban does not behave, over the horizon kind of operations can be launched by superior technology. Now let me tell you, even Washington Times of today has quite clearly said that the over the horizon operation or a drone attack which was launched there, it only killed innocent. And let me also tell you that when an innocent is killed, 2 more terrorists are born. Today, we have been dealing in Kashmir, as far as terrorism is concerned, we have never used heavy weapons. We have not used drones. We have not used airstrikes. Only for one reason, because we know that if you do so, you create more terrorists, and population is the center of gravity in a counterinsurgency operation. So therefore, that idea is not going to work. The second idea, which was tried off by various powers, was create a countervailing force, create another terror force, or strengthen another terror force, or strengthen another opposition. I think we have tried it enough, and that I don't think does work. It has not worked. So therefore, what is going to work? There are Taliban winning Afghanistan is one step. Governing Afghanistan is a second problem and is the major problem. To govern, you need money. Pakistan cannot give money. Iran cannot give money. China will give money only on its terms. If it finds that it is too risky to invest, it will not invest. let's be quite clear on these issues. Because Chinese, in no uncertain terms, the Global Times has said that I will not be the third country in the graveyard of empire. So Chinese will keep their options open. If they find they are finding a major problem with CPEC, because the terrorists in Pakistan earlier used to target Pakistani military. But now they have realized as many Pakistani military guys you kill, it doesn't make a difference. But if you kill 2 Chinese, it makes all the difference. The same model will be adopted by Pakistan, by Talibanis. That if you kill 2 Chinese, you will get more money, because then China will say, I want to buy you guys. Please, and they will keep increasing their price, as Pakistan has been doing, and it has fleeced enough amount of material and money from United States and military hardware, and continues to do it. And still, US is running out of option, and they still want to engage Pakistan. And I think the CIA chief is still moving around in Pakistan as of today. So that's the second part of it. So therefore, the terrorism moves on money. You choke the fund, a lot of it will subside. Similarly, as far as FATF is concerned, you put Pakistan in blacklist, you will find that a lot of effort will be saved. And these are hard steps which we will have to be taken. Yes, if you want to take UNSC route, Ambassador was talking about, I have been in UNSC, let me tell you in no uncertain terms. They have got a P5 support in terms of China. No resolution, worthwhile resolution will go through. Earlier, despite India being president of UNSC, the resolution earlier had Taliban in the text. But subsequently, what happened was that China did not agree, and the resolution was diluted. Taliban was removed from there, and final resolution says no country should use its territory against exporting terrorism or for exporting terrorism against any other country. Now this actually means nothing. So therefore, UNSC route is not going to work so well. FATF route, there I think every country and every member has got one vote, and there is no veto power there. So FATF route is a better option if we have to stop it. Second is, there will be internal fragmentation of these terror groups who are there in Afghanistan. And this fragmentation is going to lead to a major problem, and that problem, it's already started. The TTP is attacking Pakistan, already started. TTP is also telling that in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, why should you not be on Sharia law? If Sharia law is the order of the day, if Sharia law is the ideal of jihadis, then why not Pakistani? They are asking them in no uncertain terms. Why your ladies are doing fashion show? Why your ladies are doing going into movies? And why not us? And the fact is, I must salute all the brave girls, brave ladies of Afghanistan. They are the only people. They are the only people with guts who are fighting these terrorists, and everybody is on mute. This is unfortunately, you may find that I am a little emotional, but the kind of atrocities, the scenes which you see every day, the way, the scenes which you saw of people throwing their babies out of Taliban controlled territory, I think if it does not disturb a sane person, I think there is something basically wrong with humanity. And therefore, I think the humanity has to get together. We have to find a way out. I don't think by saying that, no, this is the ideology, this will carry on, and yes, the whole world will remain like this. No, I'm sorry. We will have to make a better world. And you and me and everybody in the entire world put together can certainly make a difference. And let's make a difference. Let's have this hashtag Save Afghan Women. Let's have this, let's have a counter ideology to the maddening ideology of Wahhabism. So I would say, and I would end by saying that there are hopes. Let's not lose hopes. And let's not grant them and give them a green card that yes, what you have done, nobody can do anything to you. No, a lot can be done, and lot should be done, and lot must be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Major General Asthana, for your very, lucid and very, to the point presentation, which is solution oriented for the future. What we need is solutions for the future, how we tackle the ideology that is perpetuating this terrorism. I think going through all the speakers, there is some continuity, although everyone spoke with a different perspective, different viewpoint, and brought their, personal professional experience into the presentation. But the message that I hear has one, commonality. That is the centrality of Pakistan as the fountainhead of terrorism. Centrality of Pakistan as the fountainhead of what I would like to call Jihadistan. And unless we tackle that issue, we tackle the root cause or the root source and choke its funding or choke its sort of capabilities, we will not be able to deal with the peripheral manifestations elsewhere. That's the message all the four speakers have given. I was going through the chat functions and there are a lot of comments, but there was one question and I will read aloud the question. Any of the four panel members may answer the question, but I would appreciate if Ambassador Kapoor takes the first go on that particular question. The question is from Dr. Rajiv Garg from Delhi in India. And his question, what is the reason for the West to look the other way when Pakistan is openly playing a double game in Afghanistan? So as I said, all the four panel members may answer, but I would like to start with Ambassador Kapoor.
Well, that is a very unfortunate part of strategic decision making which has taken place in the recent past, because the domestic compulsions, domestic issues have overtaken the broader understanding. And also, what I felt was like Siddharthji mentioned earlier and Saptarishi mentioned earlier, the aspect of the vision in the Western world and the strategic community not understanding clearly the repercussions of what is to come was not correctly and completely understood. The other aspect where I will bring in India's name into the game plan is that India has a different relationship with Afghanistan and a different outlook in foreign affairs. We were continuously requested for a long time to come in with our, boots on the ground to support the Western countries. In my personal opinion, as I've said on other forums, we could and we should have made a, different decision in the case of Afghanistan because of the phenomenal strategic repercussions on India. We continued with the same line as earlier because I had been in a meeting, for example, with our former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, with President Bush and the advisors from both the sides, including Brajesh Mishra and others, where the American side had persistently and repeatedly insisted upon Indian presence in Iraq. In any number, the wording, I remember that meeting very, very clearly in my mind even today. President Bush and his team, including Colin Powell and others, said that you can bring in any number of Indian soldiers. You want to bring in 1,000, you want to bring in 10,000, you want to bring in 100,000. And you tell us which part of Iraq you want to come into, etc. And we will give that to you, whether it's the oil wells part of it, oil-bearing region of Iraq, or any other part, and we will support you completely. And Vajpayee very sensibly at that time refused. But in Afghanistan, I'm sure we have repeatedly been requested over the last 20 years similarly, and we should have made a different decision. And that may have, because our relationship with these countries is from millennia. the people of Afghanistan, deep down in their hearts, have a lot of respect for Indians and a lot of affinity. They come here for studies. When I saw them and I interacted with the leadership, and I've been interacting with Afghans on the street corners, it is a very different paradigm. Now, just as an example, you have the case where, anyway, I'm going to stop here because there are other speakers also. I have some more points, but I'll bring them in later.
Thank you, Ambassador Kapoor. I saw that General Asthana wanted to say something.
Yes, I would like, I'll answer this question straightforward manner. Firstly, there is a strategic location of Pakistan. Earlier, when US went in for operation in Afghanistan, the only ground-based logistic route goes via Pakistan because of adversary relation with Iran. So their dependency on Pakistan was tremendous. Their dependency on Pakistan continued to remain for two reasons, even after that. One is the intelligence, and I've interacted with a number of strategists as well as the number of generals who have been serving in Afghanistan, the US generals. At that point of time, and even now, there are two major factors which mute the response of United States towards Pakistan. One is that if a situation comes up again, and again there is a situation wherein some terror group in Afghanistan becomes strong enough to strike US again, they may need Pakistan again. So therefore, they don't want to push Pakistan beyond a point. The second reason is the nuclear hangover. Pakistan is the only Islamic country which is nuclear. There are a number of countries which are going against the interests of United States. There is a fear, not that the nuclear technology will be passed on, also not that the nukes will be passed on to the terrorists, but there is a fear that a dirty bomb is a possibility. And therefore, they do not want to push Pakistan beyond a point. I asked a question from one of the ambassadors, I will not name, of United States. Why did you give military hardware to Pakistan which can only be used against India? The answer was that when we wanted Pakistan to fight global war of terrorism against Western borders, that is Afghanistan border, the only reason why they said so was that we can do it for you, provided you take away the threat which India poses on me. And therefore, you need to help me out elsewhere. Now, how do you take away the threat? Obviously, give him more military hardware. So therefore, the force ratio and the power equation changes. So that was the logic. He didn't say in that many words, but that is what he meant, that they had to be helped out elsewhere. Now, that was the elsewhere part of it. So considering all this, they find that there is some utility of that strategic space. But where they are going wrong now is, which I have been telling many strategists of United States, that earlier when you had Pakistan was doing a very nice strategic balancing between you and China. And China did not mind that. Today, Pakistan is a colony of China. Now China minds it. And that is why they went whole hog to tell Pakistan that you also go whole hog in Afghanistan to ensure that US does not stay beyond the given deadline. And today, Pakistan is a colony of China. When they said no base to US, Pakistan said no base to US. And at that point of time, like it or not, as a strategy, as an analyst, you can make out, I'm very sure that US, the Pentagon must have looked for some bases in Pakistan, but Pakistan said no. So this is the kind of equation which is happening. US, that is one of the reasons why the response of United States and the West towards Pakistan has been not what everybody thought. If I have to say my last point, they all knew the engagement of Pakistan with these terror groups right from the word go. Their intelligence has been very good, and in fact, they knew more than the Pakistani terror groups which are being used against us. And In fact, we had to depend on US intelligence at some point of time. So this is the kind of equation which they have between them.
Thank you, General Astana. Thank you very much indeed. It doesn't look like that other panel members have any interest in further discussing this question, so we can move on to the next question. And the next question is asked anonymously. Has United States created an intelligent loop while withdrawing from Afghanistan for their adversary? And the adversaries are the PRIC countries, Pakistan, Russia, Iran, and China, so that they get trapped in this intelligent loop. Any of the panel members can try answering this question. Dr. Basu, please. Dr. Basu, please unmute yourself, sir.
Thank you, sir. Like I said, if you give consideration to the common narrative that US has bungled its way out or committed a mistake, you are giving an edge to a calculus which is basically hidden from the common narrative. That means US has made a mistake. Such kind of mistakes are not possible when you are talking about transnational or joint operations. That means it's a calculated move, calculated move. And what the PR is doing is to say that Joe Biden, the old geriatric fellow, has bungled it up. Nobody has bungled it up. Today, the entire AFPAC region has two aspects: corporatization of mercenary forces and corporatization of terrorism. Both are big business. And the major agency which is facilitating that is the military elite of Pakistan, which we call the military incorporated. There are civil military, let us say, consultant. Pakistan was heading a coalition of anti-insurgent forces, being the center of insurgency of the entire United Arab OPEC countries. Can you believe that? Rail Sharif was the chairman of that counter-insurgency forces of United States of Arabia. So, if you see the game which has been played is basically to create a black hole. This sociological black hole is going to suck in the stability of the state. How do you understand a black hole? You see, any conception of nation, any conception of flag, insignia, states, these are abstract, intangible concepts. You will die for a country once you have a concept of a country. You will fight against for jihad if you have a conception of jihad. These are all perception management devices. So when you play with these kind of perceptions, when you create that kind of black hole, it has the capability or it has the power to destabilize the sociological structures, socio-political structures in the surrounding, which we call as a whirlpool effect. This whirlpool effect is going to suck up right up to the stans. That means the Turkmenistan, the Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, and all these areas, it's going to suck it up. And by destabilizing what we call the shatterland, the rimland, the core is going to get affected. As I said, the Macenderian and Spikeman theory is being put into action. And since it is not now possible to take care of this kind of hyper, let us say, terrorist state, nation state which has been created, you have to send in mercenary, which means big business. And who is going to facilitate this business? The Pakistani military elite, which is in cahoots with all these PricewaterhouseCoopers and other kind of dark ops think tanks and the elites which are working there. So it is the back channel secondary diplomacy which is now casting itself over the common sense and the straightforward, let us say, diplomatic equations which everybody can see through. So this is my state on what is coming up. General Astana, sir.
General Astana wants to chime in.
I agree with him, and I'll just like to add one point. Nobody questions US wisdom on withdrawal from Afghanistan. They had to. They couldn't have been there for forever. So that's a given. The problem is withdrawal is a very complicated, difficult military operation. And in withdrawal in this operation, you are firstly supposed to have adequate force, pull out your softer elements first, and then secure the route to the airport, and then evacuate the airport, and your combat element should move at the end. What had happened was everything went right. What went wrong was that they thought that Afghan national forces will fight for 6 months. They did not fight for 6 months. From 6 months, it came down to 15 days. And therefore, this plan went awry. That's one part of it. The second thing is that as far as creating chaos is concerned, yes, creating chaos for all the neighbors can be part of the strategy. I don't dispute that. It's not there, and it's not, nobody has spoken it, and nobody will speak about it, because in this sensible world, this is not something which anybody will say, I created this, or I had this in mind. But the fact is, if you have to read between the lines, as he rightly did, the question is that balkanization also, people have to buy that idea. Now, whether people will buy that idea or not, I have my doubts. But notwithstanding that, the only thing which has actually put the entire global scenario into a very difficult situation is because of the botched withdrawal. The withdrawal could have been better, and this, I think, it's graceful to learn lessons, because all world powers learn lessons after any major, shall we say, action. So I think this is one of the lessons learned, which I'm sure all the military historians, all the strategists will learn out of this entire game. Back to you.
Thank you, General Asthana. I'll move on to the next question. That is from Singh Serin, who heads the Institute of Gilgit and Baltistan in Washington, D.C. The question he's asking is, what is the future of India-Afghanistan relationship in the current scenario?
So if you don't mind, should I go and attempt an answer to that?
Sure, Ambassador Kapoor, please.
Thank you, Adityanji. Singh is up the future of India-Afghanistan relations. Now, bilateral relations have political characteristics, economic aspects, cultural aspects, trade aspects, military aspects, and consular aspects, and so many other aspects, educational aspects, etc. Now, in a country where you have terrorists who are sitting as ministers, India has done a lot of aid diplomacy in Afghanistan, in the sense that a major part of our aid to Afghanistan of about $3 billion, which in practical terms is always an underestimate, because India's aid delivery is like almost, let us say, 100% of the money goes to that country. Unlike other countries, like if you say $2.6 trillion by US, 70% is coming back to the US, to the military industrial complex of the US. Whereas if you say $3 billion Indian aid, its actual worth is maybe, 3 times, 4 times, or 10 times as much, because it is used for that purpose with that country's interest in mind. Now, under that sort of, current situation, I see the situation as very, very bleak, because if you have ISI masters sitting in Afghanistan and Kabul, making decisions or forcing them to take decisions, you already have, for example, talking about fintech world, Central Bank of Afghanistan is being led by somebody whose Afghanistani origins are not known to anybody. A lot of the advisors who have come into Afghanistan already are people without any Afghan identity. So are they Pashtuns from the Pakistan side of the border? Who are they? Nobody knows. And there is nobody to question. So if you have that sort of dubious setup, the future of Indian-Afghan relations are extremely bleak, and it is only the military and strategic and the geopolitical context that we have to be concerned about right now, rather than any of the other aspects of diplomacy and relationships. Thank you.
Any other panel member wants to chime in about future of India-Afghanistan relationship? If not, I'll move to the next question. It's a kind of complicated question. I'm not going to read entirely. It is from Mr. Kanchan Banerjee from Boston, US. Basically, what he's alluding to that two countries, train terrorists in Pakistan, and the mess we are in is because of the two countries. One of them is, of course, US, and second country is UK because of historical reason, and Russia got sucked into it. So should it not be the logical explanation for the world to ask these two countries to clean the mess they've created there by training terrorists? Dr. Siddhartha, let me give him a chance. Dr. Siddhartha, please unmute yourself, sir. Dr. Siddhartha, please unmute.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we're going to pick it up in the reverse manner. It's very difficult to reverse the history. Very, very difficult. Now, in order to reverse the history, whatever ills that have taken place sometime, for example, take the case of slave trade, the Western world ultimately had to say sorry. But then they had to say sorry only because they had to be dependent a lot on the African countries, Nigeria, for example, on oil. Nigeria could have squeezed them. That was one reason. There was a second aspect where they said sorry to it, and that was with respect to Brazil. Now, they say sorry only when they are pushed to the wall, not exactly when they are very comfortable. There are only two ways in which they are going to be saying sorry to that. The first is when a country is very, very powerful and that can go to dictate terms. India is getting powerful. India is getting into that mold whereby it will be in a position to dictate its terms to some countries like that of Britain. But then in order to do it so, first what India will have to do with Britain is that take all of its antiques back. Ask the British to say sorry for the $84 trillion that they have stolen from India. Now, it is only then thereafter that it will go to come to the intentions of the British then thereafter. Of course, the intentions have been very questionable in this case. That is number one. The second part is, whenever a country is going to be weak or whenever it is going to be made weak, for example, Winston Churchill made it weak in a variety of ways. It was 1878 drought where it made very, very weak. There was another drought which was created and which was converted into famine where it was made very weak. Now, can you imagine all the local wisdom that we had, where it went? It went into air. And from where exactly it went into air? We are not able to use this local wisdom. And these local wisdoms have been ingenious devices. There is no way India can go to get affected by floods. There is no way India can go to get affected by drought. There is no way Indians can go to call monsoons and uncertain. This is largely because adaptation to all of these things were enshrined in the local wisdom. So people knew that is the nature of the monsoon. Monsoons have to come in this manner. People knew that is they are not going to be building their hut vents in the channel of the river itself. So why exactly it happened? It happened because of at least 2 decades of a persistent drought endorsed famine that was created by Winston Churchill, whereby the people became so poor that gave up all the local wisdom and they resigned themselves completely to fate. It was a psychological war that was meted out to the people of the country in this case. So local wisdom was there or not. British said, then the British said that is, see, this is our method to manage it. We're going to manage it, and this is the way that we're going to be managing it. And that is how all the wisdom of India was replaced by a British wisdom of sorts, if it was wisdom. So building dams was not wisdom. Using chemical fertilizer was no wisdom. And using all of this British type of building materials is no wisdom at all. We're going to find soon, you're going to find this is an energy, this has created an energy intensive society. So it was all done with a plan. And when they had done with a plan, you have to prove it. You have to get the documents of it. For example, Dr. Shashi Tharoor was responsible for getting a good number of documents by way of which he was able to prove that it was $84 trillion that was ultimately stolen from India. And that was published in Khalid Times in Dubai. That is how it was. So in order to make them say sorry, we have to go in a stepwise manner. First will be to get our own identity. Right now we don't have an identity. Imagine all of us being Indians and we are talking in English. We don't have such a strong identity to begin with. Number one, the girls don't want to, the youth don't going to be having an identity of sorts. Unless you're going to be having an identity and you are going to be strong, how is it that you can go to ask the other country to mold its own ways and to mend its fences also? That is number one. Secondly, that you have to make yourself internally very strong economically and psychologically. As one of these panel members, esteemed panel members, talked about perception management. We have to have we have to have our own perception warriors. I repeat this, own perception barriers who are able to dispel any type of a doubt that any of these Western countries go on to impose on India. That is going to be number two. Number three is going to be, there is a complete coherence in administration whereby you can go on to say that I have taken pride of my history, I have taken pride of my past, I am proud of my administration and so on. And then the fourth part that you're going to move to take into account the international aspects. Bring in a good number of countries. And then when you're powerful, only then these countries will go to say sorry for all of these things. And we deserve a sorry from all of these countries.
Thank you, Dr. Siddhartha, for a very lucid answer to that particular question. We have already overshot the time. So that was the last question we took. In interest of time, I will request our distinguished panel members to forego their closing statement because we are way above the time. We had a very, very intelligent, presentations with different viewpoints, with different perspectives, and then very rich discussion for our viewers. I have recorded this entire presentation. It will be uploaded, I think, within 24 hours. So people will have chance to review it. Those people who have not been able to join, because today here in US, we have number of similar events that are competing for attention. So people would be able to view this on YouTube and other platforms. I am indeed very thankful to our distinguished panelists, Dr. Saptarishi Basu, Dr. K. Siddhartha, Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor, and Major General Shashi Bhushan Asthana. They've done a wonderful job in discussing this complex issue with very different perspectives because they come from different backgrounds. We have emerged wiser, very richer, and we have some hope for the future, how we should be dealing with this scourge of terrorism. So with those remarks, I will end this roundtable discussion. My thanks to the viewers also who have taken more than 2 hours of their time. My thanks to my associates, Mr. Ripudaman Pachauri and Mr. Ankush Bhandari, who have given me steadfast support in organizing these activities for Council for Strategic Affairs. And as I said, we'll be back on Saturday, 25th of September, with a distinguished lecture from Ambassador Kamal Sibal. And I hope all of you will try to join for that. But for this discussion, we are calling it an end. Thank you very much indeed to all the participants, audience, and speakers. Namaskar.
Thank you very much, Aditya.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you.
even though
Pleasure.
it marks
Pleasure.
a very solemn occasion, I wish everybody a very happy Ganesh Chaturthi.
Happy Ganesha to all.
Namaskar.